Welcome to the Honest Dog Breeder Podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan, where each week we dive in to discuss all things dog breeding so you can build a breeding business you love, producing dogs that fulfill their owners' dreams. I believe you can have an honest dog breeding program that also pays the bills. So throw those pods in your ears while you're cleaning kennels. I'd love to join you. I remember sitting there in the vet's office, tears running down my face as I silently cried. The invoice was in my hands, $1,300. Not that much money in the scheme of things, but it was for me back then. I was in the middle of my divorce, a single mom with 2 little kids, and $1,300 was about all I had in the bank. The puppy had parvo. She didn't have a home yet, but she was a good dog. I knew I had to pay the $1,300 to give her the only chance she had at survival. But it was only a chance at best. The veterinary office staff was looking at me, and I felt the judgment. I felt like they were looking at me like I was a joke. What kind of breeder was I, sitting there, pausing to say yes to give a dog her only hope at surviving parvo? As I sat there on the lobby couch, a million things were running through my mind. Do I wipe out my whole account for this? Because it was all I had. The right answer is to take care of the dogs you've bred, but the right answer is also to take care of your kids. The right answer is to have enough money to fill up your gas tank. The right answer is to have enough money to pay the electric bill. How many favors can you call in with friends and families before enough is enough? The dogs were supposed to be my thing that helped me feed my kids, not take away from them. But how do you say no to a puppy in that much pain? A puppy you brought into the world. A puppy you are responsible for. I knew I would pay it. I had to. We are responsible for the dogs we bring into this world. Yet, in saying yes, I was also saying no to so much else. Mostly my pathetic little bit of financial security. I looked at my kids. They needed so much more than I was providing. And here I was, failing at the very thing that was supposed to be giving me breathing room and allowing me to be a present mom. With some luck, the puppy would make it through. If I could get her healthy past the parvo shedding phase, then she would be safe to rehome. At the time, my dogs were $1,200. So if she made it, at least I could recoup the investment. Almost. She did pull through. She beat parvo. Then, about a week later, her body gave out. The virus had taken too much out of her and she died. As breeders, we see some terrible things. We go through horrible moments that make you feel like your chest is collapsing and you can't breathe. I know the public thinks breeding is all puppies, sunshine, and rainbows, but if you've been doing this a while, you know that is simply not always the case. There are moments in breeding where you are faced with a decision you wish you never had to make. And the truth is, we cannot always prevent these moments. We cannot guarantee that we will never end up at the emergency vet. We cannot guarantee that every puppy will thrive. We cannot guarantee that every dog will recover, every litter will go smoothly, or every problem will be caught early enough to fix easily. But we can build our breeding programs in a way that takes some of the financial pressure off those moments. And that matters. Because it is one thing to sit in the vet's office and say, do everything you can. I know this may not work, but I have the money set aside and I know I'm doing the best I can. And it is a completely different thing to sit there thinking, if I say yes to this, I may not be able to buy dog food. I may not be able to pay the electric bill. I may not be able to take care of my kids. That is the kind of pressure that breaks people. And I think this is one of the reasons I am so passionate about breeders making a profit. Not because I think breeders should be greedy, not because I think the money matters more than the dogs, but because money gives you room to make the right decision without feeling like the right decision is going to destroy everything else. When you have no margin, every emergency becomes a moral crisis. You are not just saying, what does this dog need? You are asking, can I afford to do what this dog needs? And when the answer is no, or even maybe not, that is where the guilt and shame come in. Because most breeders do not want to deny care. Most breeders are not looking for a way out. Many breeders are sitting there with a knot in their stomach, trying to figure out how to do the right thing with the money they don't have. And even when they do pay it, like I did, there can still be this awful aftermath. Because sometimes you spend the money and the dog still dies. Sometimes you do everything right and it still doesn't work. And if you had to empty your whole bank account to try, now you are not only grieving the dog, you are also panicking about the money. That is a brutal combination. Grief is heavy enough on its own. It does not need to be mixed in with financial ruin. This is where I think the conversation about profit and breeding gets completely twisted. The other day, I wrote a post about breeders making a profit and why I believe it is necessary. Someone commented that it was okay for a breeder to make profit as long as the profit was only spent back on the puppies or the breeding dogs. And I get what she was trying to say. I think she was trying to protect the dogs from being treated like quick cash. None of us want breeding to become a situation where dogs are used, neglected, or treated like inventory so someone can make money. But I think this is where we get tangled up in the conversation around money and breeding. Because there is a difference between profit that exploits and profit that supports. Profit that exploits says, how much can I take while giving this as little as possible? And that is not honest breeding. Profit that supports says, what does this program need in order to care well for the dogs, support the buyers, pay the breeder, absorb risk, and keep making good decisions? That is the kind of profit I am talking about. Because yes, of course the dogs need to be taken care of. The breeding dogs need excellent care. The puppies need excellent care. The setup needs to be safe and clean. Vet care, food, supplies, enrichment, testing, time, support, it all matters. But if all those things are handled well, and there is still money left over at the end of the litter, does that somehow make someone a worse breeder? I don't think it does. I don't think a breeder is more ethical because she is broke at the end of a litter. I don't think she is more caring because every dollar disappeared. And I don't think she is more responsible because one emergency could wipe out everything she has. What makes someone an honest breeder is not whether she personally benefited. It is whether the dogs are cared for. The puppies are raised with intention. The placements are thoughtful. The buyers are supported. And the program is built to keep that responsibility going. It is the only condition. It is the condition of the breeding dogs. It is the health and stability of the puppies. It's the quality of the placements. It is the support given to buyers. It is the thought, care, and responsibility behind the program. It is not whether the breeder personally benefited. And that is the part I think we need to talk about more honestly. Because breeding dogs does not just cost money. It costs time. It costs energy. It costs sleep. It costs focus. It costs availability. When you have a litter, you are not just raising puppies in some separate little corner of your life. You are giving those puppies pieces of your life. You may be skipping dinner with your family. You may be missing time with your kids. You may be distracted when your spouse is talking to you. You may be saying no to trips, hobbies, rest, projects, work, opportunities, or even just a peaceful evening because the puppies need you. And honestly, that can be okay. Breeding dogs does require sacrifices sometimes. Most meaningful things in life do. But the trade-off has to make sense. If you get to the end of a litter and all you did was reimburse yourself for the expenses, you did not really break even. You may have recovered the money that you spent on the litter, but what about your time? What about your energy? What about the sleep you lost? What about the hours your family had to work around the puppies? What about the parts of your life that got a little put on hold? That is the hidden cost. And I think a lot of breeders do not count it because they love the puppies. And I understand that. Puppies are fun. They're beautiful. Watching them grow is wonderful. Matching them with the right families is very meaningful. There is a lot of joy in breeding, but joy alone is not enough to compensate for the cost. Cute puppies are wonderful, but they don't make up for a life that keeps getting squeezed smaller and smaller around the breeding program. It feels different when the breeding program brings good things back into the family, when it pays for the kids' activities, when it helps with the mortgage, when it funds a vacation, when it improves the property, when it allows the breeder to stay home, when it builds savings, when the family can look at the busy season and say, that was a lot, but it was worth it. That is very different from mom being exhausted, the house being chaotic, everyone working around the dogs, and at the end of it, there is nothing left except the relief that the puppy expenses were covered. That is not really breaking even. That is getting paid back for the supplies while donating your life. And maybe you can do that for a while, but eventually something starts to give. You start to resent the work. Your spouse starts to resent the dogs. Your kids start to feel like puppies always come first. You start being tempted to cut corners because you're tired. You start delaying things because the money is tight. You start feeling trapped by the very program you built because you love your dogs. This is the part I see in strategy sessions with breeders all the time. I can see the good intentions. They love their dogs. They care deeply. They want to do the right thing. They are not careless people, but they are exhausted. They are overwhelmed by the number of dogs they are managing, the constant needs of the program, the repairs that have been put off, the vet care they know they need but cannot comfortably afford, and the endless pressure of being the only person holding the whole thing together. And eventually, the lack of profit starts making decisions for them. They cannot fix the kennel issue because there is not enough money. They cannot run the extra testing because the last litter did not leave enough margin. They cannot get the dog to the specialist because the cash is not there. They cannot hire help because every dollar is already spoken for. They cannot take a break because no one else knows the system. They cannot get a job because the dogs require them to be home. And they cannot step away because the program depends entirely on their presence. So they get stuck. And this is where burnout becomes dangerous. Because burnout in breeding is not just emotional exhaustion. It is not just a tired breeder needing a vacation. Burnout becomes the point where the breeder starts compromising what she knows would be best because she no longer has the money, time, or energy to support doing it. That is not always a character problem. Often, it is a business design problem. Let's look at what this hidden cost actually does. It shows up in emergencies, when the vet bill hits and there's no buffer. It shows up in your real life, in your sleep, your marriage, your kids, your health, your home, and your peace. It shows up in the dog's care, in the repairs that wait too long, or the facilities you don't want to show off, or the help you want to hire but simply can't. And the improvements you keep telling yourself you're going to make after the next litter. It shows up in your decision making when you accept the buyer you should have said no to or breed a dog who's really done and ready to retire because you need the money. It doesn't just affect the dogs, it shows up for buyers too. When a breeder is stretched too thin, the buyer experience usually gets thinner. The communication is more rushed, the education is less organized, the follow-up is harder to maintain, the breeder is answering questions from exhaustion instead of steadiness. That does not mean she does not care. It means the business has not been built to support the level of care she wants to give. This is where profit and lifestyle design matter so much. Profit gives a breeder options. Profit pays for the vet visit before the problem gets worse. Profit allows repairs to happen before the setup becomes stressful or unsafe. Profit makes it possible to hire help, improve systems, reduce chaos, and make better decisions. Profit gives the breeder enough margin to say no, slow down, retire a dog early, skip a litter, or solve a problem properly. And lifestyle design matters just as much. A breeding program should not require you to sacrifice your health, family, or your finances, your home, your peace, in order to prove that you love your dogs. That is not sustainable. And eventually, it is not best for the dogs either. Good intentions are not enough to protect a breeding program from burnout. Love is not enough to pay the vet bill. Passion is not enough to build systems. Dedication is not enough to create capacity. I want breeders to build programs that are good for the dogs, good for the buyers, and also good for the breeder's real life. That does not mean every breeder needs to scale. It does not mean every litter needs to create a huge profit. It does not mean money is the only reason to breed. But it does mean the breeder needs to build financial breathing room into the work because breeding takes too much time, energy, risk, and responsibility to simply reimburse expenses and call it good. Profit is not what makes a breeder unethical. Profit is often what keeps an honest breeder stable enough to keep doing the right thing. Profit is breathing room. It's the emergency fund. It's the ability to say yes at the vet. Profit is the ability to fix the problem before it becomes worse. And it's the ability to make decisions from responsibility instead of desperation. And if we say breeders should only make enough to cover expenses, we are ignoring one of the biggest expenses of all, risk. Breeding carries risk, financial risk, emotional risk, physical risk, time risk, family risk. And if the breeder is carrying all of that risk with no real return, then she is not breaking even. She's absorbing the cost somewhere else. Maybe in her bank account, maybe in her marriage, maybe in her kids, maybe in her health, maybe in her ability to keep showing up with patience and care. Eventually, something pays for it. That is the hidden cost so many breeders are paying. They think they are being noble because they are not making much money. They think they are being more ethical because they put every dollar back into the dogs. They think the fact that they are exhausted and broke proves how much they care. But being depleted is not proof of integrity. Being broke is not proof of love. And struggling to afford the next emergency does not make you a better breeder. It just makes you vulnerable. An honest breeding program should be good for the dogs. It should be good for the puppies. It should be good for the buyers. But it also has to be good for you, the breeder. Because when the breeder is financially stressed, emotionally exhausted, and constantly operating from survival mode, the whole program becomes fragile. And fragile programs do not make better decisions. Stable breeders make better decisions. Supported breeders make better decisions. Profitable breeders have more options. And when the breeder has more options, the dogs are usually better protected too. This is why I'm teaching the Elevated Breeder Workshop. Because raising your puppy price by $1,000 is not about randomly choosing a higher number and hoping buyers go along with it. That is not the point. The point is that many honest breeders are already carrying more value, more risk, and more responsibility, and more support than their price reflects. A higher price gives you the ability to build a buffer. It gives you the ability to take better care of your dogs. It gives you the ability to support your buyers with more confidence. It gives you the ability to bring something good back into your family. So breeding is not only taking from your life, but also contributing to it. But I also know that raising your price can feel scary. A lot of breeders know they probably should charge more, but they are afraid of what buyers will think. They are afraid people will accuse them of being greedy. They are afraid they will price themselves out of their market. They're afraid they will raise their price and then not know how to explain the value behind it. And that is exactly why I do not want you to just pick a higher number and hope it works. Inside Elevated Breeder, I'm going to teach you the 4 pieces that need to be in place behind raising your puppy price by $1,000. So the increase is not random, awkward, unsupported. Because the goal is not just to make your puppies more expensive. The goal is to position your program so the right buyers can see the value in what you are already doing. Understand why your puppies are worth more and have them feel confident choosing you. When those 4 pieces are in place, a higher price does not feel like some bold, uncomfortable leap. It starts to feel like the natural result of a stronger, clearer, and more intentional breeding program. So if this episode made you realize your current price is not really supporting the risk, responsibility, time, care, and buyer support behind your breeding program, I want you to join me. Elevated Breeder is a live planning workshop where we are going to build the 4 pieces of your breeding business that allow you to raise your puppy price by $1,000. And we are getting close to the start of the workshop. So this is the time to get in if you want to do this work live with me. If your program needs more margin, not because you want to be greedy, but because you want better care for your dogs, your buyers, your families, and yourself, then come join Elevated Breeder. Let's build the business pieces behind your price. Because when your price better reflects the work, risk, care, and responsibility behind your program, you can do so much more. More for your dogs, more for your puppies, more for your buyers, and more for your family. And of course, more for you too. Because an honest breeding program should not leave you constantly choosing between doing the right thing and staying financially afloat. It should be built with enough margin that you can keep doing the right thing for a long time. You can learn more and sign up at honestdogbreeder.com/elevated breeder. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Honest Dog Breeder podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan. I hope to see you inside Elevated Breeder. If you found this episode helpful, please tap that like button. It helps me better understand you and supports the channel. If you're a current or aspiring dog breeder, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos come out. Thanks.